So today we're going to talk about multiplying, proper fractions. Multiplying proper fractions using an area model. Okay, so multiplying proper fractions using an area model. What does proper mean? Proper means less than one whole. So a proper fraction is anything less than a whole. So a part, that's what proper fraction means. Less than a whole, a part. So you do not have to have this paper. We're going to read it, circle it, and then do it on our notebook. So Jordan's teacher has set up half of the classroom for testing the effects of friction on a rubber band powered vehicle. We did that. I can picture what that looks like, testing vehicles in half the classroom. Jordan and his classmates will use a fourth of that space. What was that space? That space was half. So I just heard that Jordan and his classmates are going to use a fourth of that half to test how they move on tile floor. How much of the classroom is being used to test it? This word of that half of the classroom. So I know this is a multiplication problem because I'm using fourth of the space. So I'm using a fourth of that space. A fourth of that space. Okay? Another way I could write this is a half times a fourth. Okay? I'm taking a fourth of that half, but this is kind of set up the way the problem was, so I'm going to look at it this way. So I have to draw rectangles. Let's make a note. Draw rectangles. I can't use area model with circles. I have to draw rectangles. So I'm going to draw it nice and big. And I'm going to take a half of that space. Okay, so I'm going to use half that space, and I'm going to color it in. Okay, so if this is the classroom, half the classroom is all set up for vehicles. I get what that looks like. Okay? So I draw first fraction, shade. To draw first fraction, and I shade. Draw second fraction the other direction. Can you picture? Hold on, let me write this and I'll give you a chance to write on. Draw the second fraction the other direction. Shade. So I can imagine that we had a fig Newton. We cut our fig Newton. Remember when we did that and we had half of it? Now if I'm taking a fourth of it, I have to cut it away. So I have to cut, so on this side I have to make it look like fourths. And I took a fourth of it. I did this one kind of dotted because I didn't really have this part to begin with. This was the part of the classroom that it wasn't working, but I took a fourth of it. Okay? Okay, so your answer, your product, equals the part that is double shaded. Your product equals the part that's double shaded. What part is double shaded? This part. So my answer is one part out of how many total parts there are? 8. Okay, my class, when we did this last week with fig Newtons, we had to repeat this. Why did I have to cut up the entire fraction? Why could I not just have had a half? I have to cut the whole model. I have to cut up this whole entire model or rectangle so I can find my denominator. Because if I only cut this part, then I would just be having fourths, but I didn't. I cut the whole thing and it was eighths. Because I had half and then I cut all of it. My camera is wiggling today. I cut all of it into fourths. So my answer here is 1/8. Some of you can figure out the shortcut pattern to do it without the model. Let's do another one. All right, so the art teacher asked the students to design a mural with their handprints. A mural, I'm looking for something really big, probably goes on the wall. The students plan to cover 2/5 of the mural with handprint tiles. 1/3 of those handprint tiles, what are handprint tiles? Are 2/5. So 1/3 of the 2/5 will be red. What part of this mural will be red? Taking 1/3 of those handprints. And the handprints covered 2/5. So I'm taking 1/3 of the 2/5. So I'm going to do 2/5 and I'm going to take 1/3 of it. So I'm going to draw my rectangle because that's what my steps up here say. I should not have had an S on this. It should just be one rectangle. I'm going to make it big enough so I can do it. I'm going to show 2/5. Remember I labeled. This is important that I label. So now I'm drawing my first fraction. 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to get my first color and I'm going to show what 2/5 looks like. I'm going to show what 2/5 looks like. Okay. Now, this is how much our handprint tiles are going to go. So this big mural, something else is going over here. I'm not sure what. The problem didn't say. 2/5 of this are handprint tiles. So of these, I have to take 1/3 of it is going to be red. So I have to do 1/3 on this side. 1/3 of it goes on this side. So these are going to be red. So I kind of make all this be 1/3 of this is going to be red. But how much am I talking about? I have to do the part that is double shaded. So how much is double shaded? This one, because this is my 1/3, this is the 2/3, this is my 3/3. So I'm just looking at the one that's double shaded. So how many? 2. How many total do I have in my box now? 5, 10, 15. I had 15 total in my box. Can 2/15 be simplified? This is odd, this is even, 2 cannot go into this. So I'm going to write a problem. 2/5 times 1/3. Okay, some of us are probably understanding the pattern of where these numbers are coming with. Some of you figured out what it was when we were doing it with Fig Newtons the other day in class when we had our knives, we were cutting them up. So let's do one more. Okay, this is going to be one of the you pause. I realize that I have done something what I tell you guys every time not to do, go into the middle of my notebook. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but let's just pretend that I'm not doing this. I flipped my page over. One of my pages came unglued. That's how I figured it out. All right, so let's say in our classroom, we have 3/4 of our room is carpeted. And half of that is full of desks. So what part of our classroom is carpeted and has desks on it? So 3/4 of our classroom is carpeted. Half of that space has desks in it. So how much space of our classroom is carpeted with desks? All right, so I'm going to draw my rectangle. Well, actually, I'd like you to pause and do just what we did. Follow the steps on the other side that you have written down. Draw your rectangle. Draw the first fraction shade. Going the other direction, draw the next fraction shade. And then look at the part that is double shaded. Go ahead and pause and you do it. All right, so let's see what you've done. I'm going to go a little faster since you shouldn't have to be pausing in between. Should have already done this. Step 1, I drew my rectangle. Step 2, I did my first fraction. And I'm going to label it at the top. Okay, 3/4 of my room is carpeted. My other fraction goes the other direction. Half of it has chairs on it. Which one is double shaded? Which is both blue and pink? These. These are both blue and pink. So how many pieces? 3. Let's write it up here. 3 out of how many? 8. So my answer is 3/8. Remember, when I multiply proper fractions, my answer gets smaller. So I'm going to have a sentence starter, and I want you to finish it. So tomorrow I'm checking, could we do this one correct? And I'm checking to see what your sentence says. So when I multiply proper fractions, my product and I want you to finish that sentence. So what happens to your product? Oops. Does it get bigger? Does it get smaller? Am I cutting it away? Am I adding to it? What do you learn? What did you know from what we did with Fig Newtons the other day and what we're doing right now? Finish that sentence. Tell me what you know in math so far. Tomorrow, that's what I'll be checking.